Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Her alcoholism was at its fiercest. Desperately looking for a way out of her addiction, Sherry joined a fundraiser that would require her to cycle hundreds of miles from Michigan to Texas, despite not even owning a bike. Pedaling while miserably hungover and being chased by everything from poodles to pit bulls, she soon discovered the road of freedom wasn't on a bicycle. True recovery would come from following a different path. Our next guest chronicles her fight to escape alcoholism and all its shame and secrecy. Written with a balance of honesty and humor, Sherry holds nothing back as she details her secret double life as an addicted follower of Messiah. Recounting the many failed attempts to reach sobriety the hard way, she offers hope to others without judgment or useless cliches, assuring fellow believers that redemption and healing can be found without riding a bike for thousands of miles. Addictions, whether it be drinking, excessive spending, prescription drugs, gambling, social media, or being entangled in sexual sin, can be found in every walk of life, but you too can ride your way to freedom and find a deeply satisfying partner in Jesus to help you get there. Sherry Hoppen is a Christian wife, mother, grandmother, and a recovering alcoholic. She writes and speaks about overcoming the shame of being a Christian woman entangled in the nightmarish secrecy of addiction. She's the founder of She Surrenders, a ministry to help women confront and surrender the secrets they shamefully hold close. Through this ministry, Sherry aspires to help women find freedom from alcohol and other addictive substances and behaviors. Joining us now to talk about her new book, Sober Cycle, Pedaling Through Recovery One Day at a Time, is Sherry Hoppen. Sherry, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to ask you, Sherry, if you turn your speakers down just a little bit for me as we're getting some feedback.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that.
See how that is.
Sherry, before we get into the story of the way out, we kind of want to take a journey all the way back to the story of the way in. And that's really where the journey begins, is where it all started. And this parallel journey of faith and addiction. Take us back to the early years and what the influences were that both led you to faith and then also to addiction.
Well, to go way, way back, I grew up out in the country in the Christian Reformed Church, and I had a mom and a dad and a brother and a sister, and life was pretty good. I have a lot of good childhood memories. And I would say that my aspirations in life when I was younger was to just be a wife and mother. And I got married when I was 18. My parents had recently divorced, which led to, a little bit of entanglement, especially deciding to get married at 18. I don't think they were really in favor of that, but thank goodness, 36 years later, here we are. And I just set out to be a wife and a mom. We had a baby 2 years into our marriage, and then we had another one a couple years later. So we were young. We were a young family. We were broke most of the time, but we were doing our best. And somewhere in there was an undertone that I look back on that I didn't see at the time, but alcohol was involved, although I wasn't drinking it inappropriately, or it wasn't something I thought about all the time. But I would say there was about a 15-year period where alcohol and I got along just fine. And one day I realized I was drinking too much, but there were some other things leading up to that. I lost a brother tragically when he was 24 and I was 28. And I've often gone back to and wondered, why didn't I start, drinking addictively then? But I used other coping mechanisms, but most of all, I was very depressed. And on the other side of that, we had our third child. She was 10 years behind our oldest, so she was a bit of a surprise, one of the best surprises we've ever had. But I feel like I was probably on that course, and then it was changed suddenly. So alcohol was kind of put in the background again. And I don't really know what there wasn't like a pivotal moment or, something trauma related that happened in that moment, but it was gradual. But then one day I realized this might be a problem. And I also was cocky enough to think that it might be a problem right now, but I'm going to fix it. But for now, this is working. And I remember thinking that it's working. And what is it working for? It's working for me to believe that I still am the perfect wife and mother when I didn't feel like I was at all. This image that I had built up as what I was going to be in our home, I didn't feel like I was. And it just started like a crumbling brick wall. Little pieces started to fall off until everything that I was doing, I felt like I had to hide, or I had to be bolstered with alcohol to do just about anything, social events, just about anything. I lost my courage, and I lost my why. And basically, I just felt like I was not enough. And then you add Christian to the top of that. And I was a Christian woman working in ministry, and I was active in our church. I was a football mom. I was all those things, but I was hiding. And that led to this double life for about 10 years. That was a debilitating process.
Sherry, your journey to faith, you grew up in the church, but was there a time when you grabbed a hold of the faith as your own? Was it in your youth, or was it in sobriety and finding that the real relationship was actually the solution, the gateway to recovery?
It's a great question, because it is most of my journey. Growing up as a child and into my teens, I knew that I loved the Lord, and I knew that God would take care of us. I do know that things like my parents getting divorced kind of made me doubt my faith a little, like, God, where are you? In adolescence. And then later, I know when my brother was killed, I was incredibly angry with God. And I don't think I recovered from that. And I feel like even though I didn't start drinking when he was killed, I did start on the path of being angry with God and keeping him at arm's length. One of the things that I discovered, thankfully, while I was writing my book was I am a big journaler. I journal every day. And I was doing a lot of the work, and so was God, to draw me back in. And I was talking to him, and I was pleading with him, but I didn't feel like I had the right to claim God like I really wanted to, because I was still drinking. And I discovered later on in writing and in reflecting and in counseling that God still loved me through that. Even though I wasn't being perfect and meeting his expectations as I thought of it. But it was all part of the journey that had to happen. So when I finally did say enough, when I did finally surrender, it was all God. And I've never felt his presence like I did in that moment. And that was the start of probably my most passionate relationship with Christ you could ever imagine. And I knew then that that's what was missing, that total surrender and total trust, and trusting him to make a way.
As you were balancing this dual existence, how well did you hide this from your husband? How well did you hide it from, we've heard the term functioning alcoholic.
I read the term probably a year or so after I had gotten sober, highly functioning alcoholic, and I was like, oh, there's a name for me, because I was so about appearance and what other people saw that I think the last couple of years of my drinking where I was really hiding it, but I was also isolating. I didn't give people a lot of opportunity to see it. But up till then, there were many, many times, including my husband, that nobody knew I was drinking. And, just I thought everybody knew later on. But I did a really good job of hiding it. I wore a mask. I wore a mask for years of, look at me, I'm working in a Christian pregnancy center. I'm teaching children's choir. I am all of it. I am your Christian woman. Look at me. And I did a really good job of that. It was probably one of my finer acting career moments, but it was all fake. And that's all I knew how to do was fake. So I always say that I don't like to do anything unless I know I can do it well. And that was one of them. So later on, my husband was the only one that was clued in. And we worked privately for many years to try and get my drinking under control, to moderate, and it would get out of control and he would be upset and the whole pattern would start all over again. And until it came to a point, Christmas 2009, I overdid it, over-imbibed at a family Christmas party, and my kids were part of my audience. And that was a really pivotal moment where they realized Mom is a problem. But up till then, they've told me that they really didn't know. And I consider that a gift now, because they can look back and not think, oh, Mom was drunk my whole life, So there was that. But yes, I did everything I could to hide it and protect it. And if I had to lie, I lied. Living a life of addiction, especially as a Christian woman, I think the level of shame is higher. Not only do you have this addiction you're incredibly ashamed of, but if you're a Jesus girl, isn't Jesus supposed to keep this from happening to you? Or if you trusted Jesus, would it have changed? I just think that alone keeps you in the cycle of addiction longer. So, yeah.
There's a certain amount of that war that goes on inside of you, that fear of discovery, fear of not living up to your own expectations and therefore having to mask those feelings of disappointment in yourself, of shame, of not performing the way you want to perform, and then the fear of being caught. In the book, you chronicle times where you were drinking in the closet, and you would be hung over, and you would think that it would be obvious to the people around you, but you hid it so well and pushed through it so well that it was not as apparent as one would think it would be, which gives me reason to believe that there's probably many more walking around like yourself that are wearing a mask, living a dual life, and in self-denial, which is where you were, in self-denial, that you were actually able to pull this off, and it wasn't a problem as long as you could look good.
Mm-hmm. After that Christmas where my family, everybody, I was a aunt, mother, daughter, wife, all those things at that party, and they all watched me fall, and it wasn't pretty. It was very ugly. But I made sure that I told everybody what they wanted to hear, was that I was going to get better, I'm quitting. And the voice inside of me was screaming, I get it. I need to quit. I get you want me to quit, but I don't know how to do this. And instead of asking for help, I've always been that child that growing up that was, I can do this all by myself. And I didn't want that help. I just wanted to, I just told them what they all wanted to hear, kind of like to leave me alone, either, for one reason to try and figure this out. But the other reason was, leave me alone. I'll tell you what you want to hear. I'll be out of the spotlight and I can go back to what I was doing. And so in my mind, the problem wasn't that I had to quit drinking. The problem was I had to get better at covering it up. And it would be about 3 more years before I finally quit completely. And those were the rough years, for sure. So the demise of our marriage, we were not in a good place by the time I quit drinking. And I thank God every day for the godly man that I married. I had no idea what I was getting. Like I said, we were practically children when we got married. So we've grown up together and we've grown through a lot together. But yeah, he believed in me and was able to overcome a lot of the lies and hurt that I had been inflicting on him for years. So we've kind of healed together as well, and slowly, gained back the respect in a whole different way from my family and from my friends, and life looks very different now.
Your story is one that is so compelling because here you had this idyllic life, if you would, that appeared on the surface to be all together. That had to make it even twice as hard for you to struggle with this, because every time you gave in to the craving, there had to be a wash of guilt, and that required more alcohol to mask that pain before you could then deal with what else was going on. So the excess became more. It just became, you had to increase the dosage because the pain was exponentially deeper and harder to overcome.
It's definitely a vicious cycle that keeps you in the snare of addiction, because there was a cycle to it of, drink because you wanted it and you didn't know how to do life any differently, and you liked the numbing feeling that it gave you. And alcohol served as the gatekeeper to everything in life that might be hard. Like, it just kind of blocked it. And after that, the scenario was usually a lot of anxiety over, did anybody know? What did I say? What did I do? Blackouts were very common for me. Blackouts are dangerous. I had no idea till later on when I read about it, but I had some serious blackouts almost every time I drank. So you become a detective, and you leave a trail for yourself for the next day. You try and make little notes about who you talk to while you're drinking, because you're not going to remember it later. And it's so after the anxiety of it, did anybody know, you start getting nervous and your body starts telling you, drink more, you'll feel better. So you do, and you just stay there till I was drinking pretty much 24/7 there towards the end. I mean, I even never thought I'd say this out loud, but I drank before church because I was so ashamed. I could not go face God in church. I mean, much less on my knees at home without a little liquid courage, because I don't think I've ever been so ashamed or so remorseful about anything in my life is those things. But the amazing thing is realizing later that, God has really loved me through it. And so that in itself was very redeeming.
Can you look at the divorce as being one of the triggers? You say that your brother's death wasn't really a trigger, but can you look back and see what led you to alcohol as opposed to drugs, or as opposed to other behaviors that would give you the same result?
So with my parents' divorce, being a teenager, that was hard. We lived in a small town. My family had a business in the community, and I'm sure from the outside it looked like we had it all as well. So the hard part in that was not it was more about, I was ashamed of it, even though it wasn't my story. It was my parents' story. And my youngest daughter recently pointed out to me after reading the book, she said, there was a lot that I didn't know was going on, but realizing that there's a backstory in every home that the children, aren't privy to, and maybe they never will be. But seeing what her dad and I had gone through helped me to reflect on, I don't know what was going on, but I did know I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want anybody to know about it. And it was hard, because for the first time in my life, I felt shame. And it wasn't really my shame to carry, but adopting it that early on, I felt like everything I did had to be a little bigger, a little better, and almost to prove a point. And there should be no shame in losing a sibling. But I felt guilty about the times that I should have spent with my brother that I didn't. That tended to amp up a little bit. And part of the problem there was, I went into depression, and but I just decided not to deal with it. So now you're just like the divorce, and there's a lot of things that I would smush down, and I feel like they created this perfect fertile ground for an addiction to grow in, because I had buried things for so long. And when it finally did, alcohol was easy, alcohol was acceptable, and I had little thoughts that we would camp a lot, and Friday nights, whatever, Saturday nights by the campfire, I would have a drink, and I'm sure that mine always was stronger than everybody else's, and my cup was probably refilled more often. But again, it was so gradual that I also kind of assumed that maybe everybody was doing the same thing that I was doing. And then it came to a point where, friends and, my husband especially were pointing out, that's not good. That's not right. I don't like the way you acted last night, or your mouth was mean, or just not remembering what happened the night before. All those the more that was said to me, the farther away I would push those people, because they were getting in my way. They didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't really even know what I was dealing with. But it came to a place, especially that first year of sobriety, that I had a lot to unpack. And as a Christian woman, it was never, ever my idea to expose myself with any of this. It's truly a God thing. But to get there, they talk about rock bottom, and everybody has their rock bottom moment. I think I had at least 10 of them, but I'm stubborn, and I was still going to try and fix this my way. And I look back and I see, everything from the ride for life that I talk about in my book to my career, that it all had to fall into place perfectly, because so many pieces of that come back out now, but in a positive way.
How do you feel now about the transparency in telling the story, and why now? Why now come out with this? And I'm sure your children, your husband, your family members that traversed this journey with you.
Well, shortly after I sobered up, my surrender moment was one of many, but it was the one that I believe was the authentic one, because I quit drinking a couple times, once for 6 months, once for 9 months, and then sometimes it was only a couple weeks or a couple days, but I was trying. And instead of saying, God, take this completely, it was more me making deals. Like, God, I'll only drink beer. It was all about me getting back to where I was in my mind. And now I see that I shouldn't have had any desire to go back to where I was. It should have been a matter of completely stripping away everything and saying, I'm starting right here. And in the end, that is what happened. When I quit bargaining and, begging to be out of a cycle of addiction and that I could just go back to normal life, that's not possible. And finally accepting that and saying, surrender, I surrender, take it. I'll do anything you ask. And that was my words to him. I had no idea that meant, I want you to start talking about it, because the very thing that I felt like God was asking me to do was the very thing that I had been avoiding my whole life. So the pregnancy center that I worked at was part of sponsoring a women's event in our community. And the director, a good friend of mine, asked me to speak at it in our small town. And I said yes, because I knew I had to. And that was about 2 years into my sober journey. And I did it, and it was hard. And some of the effects of talking about it have been hard on people close to me. But it's led to conversations that, again, are hard, but they need to be had. So pretty much just answering God and keeping up my end of the deal when I said I'll do anything you want is how this whole thing started. And went on to writing a blog and the website and, starting some women's groups, because I just have a lot of compassion for women stuck in addiction. And you mentioned that earlier, that there must be more like me. And I was sure that there was. But getting women to come forward and talk about it is a whole nother story. So we're really good at hiding, and
yes,
we put a lot of effort into it.
We're talking with Sherry Hoppen, author of the new book, Sober Cycle, Pedaling Through Recovery One Day at a Time. We haven't talked about the bike riding event yet, but when we return from break, we're going to talk about that day when she was invited to go along after fighting a hangover. Was approached to take this bike journey when she had not embarked on anything like this before, and how this led her to face the challenges in her life. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, host of Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Revealing Prophecy, seen every week on the Igniting Nation Broadcasting Network. Our daily on-demand programming is available on our Apple and Android apps, and on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. We broadcast live Monday through Friday through our apps, on our website, ignitingnation.com, and on Facebook Live. You can listen daily on our audio platforms on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeart. Our lineup of best-selling authors bring you the most in-depth biblical insights into the most pressing issues of our time, including prophecy, Israel, spiritual warfare, and a wide variety of contemporary Christian issues impacting the body of Messiah around the globe. If you missed the live show, you can always catch up on the Igniting Nation YouTube channel. Follow us on social media and join us as we endeavor to heal the nations with the Word of God.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to study right by my side through the Biblical Truth Library. Imagine having access to over 1,000 hours of audio and video teachings available to you through our website on a subscription basis, or via our Apple and Android apps on an a la carte basis. Whichever method you choose, we promise to deliver new insights into the living Word of God, as seen through the eyes of a Jewish believer. If you hunger and thirst like millions around the world for a deeper walk with God and the revelation of new understanding of the Scriptures, visit ignitinganation.com and click on the Biblical Truth Library or on any device with our free app. Don't let another day go by without receiving your heart's desire for a new depth of understanding into all of God's Word. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zeb Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Drs. Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black, for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, the brain, spiritual warfare, overcoming shame, mysteries of the Bible, prophetic insights, the sensational and the supernatural, caregiving, addiction recovery, understanding the divided heart, same-sex attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitinganation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitinganation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Sherry Hoppen, author of the new book, Sober Cycle, Pedaling Through Recovery One Day at a Time. Sherry, welcome back.
Thank you.
So Sherry, you tell in the book about a day that you got a phone call to come in, and the recovery center the women's center was shorthanded and they needed you, but you were actually nursing a pretty heavy duty hangover that you just didn't really want to get out of bed, but you, in keeping with the good image that you wanted to try to maintain, believing that you were still projecting that good image, you agreed to go in.
Yes. So when I got that phone call, it was on the tail end of the hangover, actually. My husband was out of town on a trip with our son and had just asked me to promise him that this time I would stay sober while he was gone. And I really didn't know how I was going to do that, but I said yes, and I wanted to mean it. But right after he left, that phone call came, and I thought it would be a good idea, at least get out of the house and away from myself. And while I was there, the director of the center, I had taken some messages up to him, and he said to me, "Where have you been hiding?" And I didn't let down this Sherry facade. I've got it all together very often, but for some reason I broke down and told him what was going on. And he was a pastor. He was the executive director of a women's pregnancy center. I did respect him, and I was immediately chastising myself inside for, revealing any truth about what had been going on. So I thought I'll just sit here and wait, and maybe he'll just pray with me or tell me what meeting to go to, or maybe some scripture. But no, he said, you need to go on the ride for life. We need more women. And I was expecting that, because the Ride for Life is a fundraiser that he had started the year before, where a bunch of, it was 8 men went from Michigan to Baltimore on bicycle. And I thought that sounded horrible. I didn't ride bike. I didn't own a bike. I was not in any shape to even get on a bike. So I kind of just dismissed it and said thank you and walked out. And through a course of events over the next 10 days before my husband came home, I didn't drink. And I kept getting woken up every night with this question of, should you? And I'd be like, should I what? And it was about the bike ride. And I would think, why does that keep coming back to me? So after my husband came home, I told him a little bit about that meeting, and he interrupted me and said, you need to do this. And I said, I can't believe that you're backing that up. And he said, no, you had told me that you wanted to be healed physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That bike ride covers all of them. And kind of against my will, we bought a bike, fancy road bike that I really didn't even know how to use. And I started riding and training. It kept me sober a lot that summer because hangovers and bike rides don't go well together at all. And 51 days later, I was part of the Ride for Life team that left from Michigan to Texas for a 2-week ride. And a couple days before we were to leave, I let fear totally get a hold of me, and I started drinking. And I binge drank severely for 3 days before we left. So the morning that we left, I was not in good shape at all, but again, nobody knew it. And every day that went by, I started to feel better because I was now, after about 3 days in, pretty much detoxing for 300 miles, I was starting to feel better. And everybody else was starting to feel more beat up, but I was embracing it. So it was hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But I learned so much about myself on that trip. I learned that I could be fun, I could be authentic, and I was surrounded by these godly people who were speaking into me but had no idea what my internal battle was. So I came home not intending to drink at all, and within a matter of a day or two, the old fears came right back. There was no Ride for Life to focus on, and I was back to, so what that you did that? It doesn't matter. You're still a drunk. You're still Sherry, the drinker. And I ended up doing that Ride for Life 3 years in a row before I finally sobered up for good. I never left with quite the severe hangover again. I did learn my lesson there, but it was, like I said, we did a ride to Orlando one year, and then we started the annual event being to ride around Michigan, which was still about the same amount of mileage, but less costly for transportation and things like that. So, but every year I still learn something about myself, and my bike has been an important tool in my recovery, and I still ride today. Granted, I don't have to ride cross country, but jumping on my bike and just getting 20 miles in clears my head like nothing else. And honestly, on my bike is where I feel closest to God. So it's a win-win.
So what was the turning point for you? So you obviously detoxed while you were on that first bike trip, but nobody really knew what the signs of detox were. You probably were aware of what you were going through and the symptoms of drying out were like, and you didn't drink on the trip, so you had to go cold turkey and detox at night when nobody was able to see you, go through the physical, emotional, and spiritual crisis that you're facing with that withdrawal.
Yeah.
So what was it that finally got a hold of you, that really was the turning point, that moment in time when God's presence, His clarion call came, and you knew that if you took your scared hand and put it in his scarred hand, that he was going to lead you out of it and you were not going to return to it?
I'm asked that question a lot. And there's a lot of things that went into that moment. I said earlier that through the bike trips, through everything that I had gone through, he was empowering me. And so I learned that anything that I did along the way, no matter how many failed attempts I had at sobriety, they were learning experiences that I had something to gain from. And there's that verse about that when you come to the end of yourself, and God is all you have left. And that was a powerful verse because God was all I needed. So in that last moment, there was a few things that happened. I had a really bad experience while my husband was gone. And I tell about it in the book of thinking I had alcohol poisoning and that I was going to die. And I recovered from that, and I had to tell my husband what had happened while he was gone. And when I told him, I knew that was it. I knew if I chose to keep going, I was going to throw away everything, and I wasn't going to get away with it this time. And I could hear this voice just saying, it's enough, it's over, it's enough, it's done. And I know that was the voice of God. And I didn't have this pull anymore to lie or to fake it or to say whatever him or somebody else needed to hear to feel better and not worry. I didn't try and sweep it under the table, but in those last moments, he said to me, you have two choices. If you choose to drink again, and I remember when he said that, my first thought was, he's going to give me another chance. He said, if you choose to drink again, you have two choices. One is to go to rehab, which I didn't want to do because disappearing for rehab for 30 days or whatever, people are going to find out. And he said, if you choose not to go to rehab, I'm going to leave. I don't want to leave you, but I'm going to leave. I'm not going to hide your secret to the kids, to our friends, to your parents anymore. It's over. Those are your two choices. So if you drink again, there's consequences both ways. And that was in the evening, and I actually, said, I want to say that's what I'm going to do. But I spent the whole day the next day just alone, crying, praying, and at some point I got on my knees and I said, I'll do whatever you want. Just take it from me. I don't want it. And I surrender. And that is exactly what happened in that moment. And I didn't know what I was going to do next as far as getting extra help or, talking to other people or meetings. And I didn't do any of that at first. I pretty much just kept to myself, and I read the Bible. I read Rick Warren's What on Earth Am I Here For? And gained a lot of knowledge from that. And eventually I came to the conclusion that I wasn't being picked on by having an addiction. I was being chosen. And it's up to me what I do with it. And that's where it turned into a drive to reach out to other women, especially Christian women, because we have a hard time coming forward and talking about it. And I just said to God, where are my people? Where are these women? And eventually I heard, you're going to have to find them. So that's when I started the website, She Surrenders. I started blogging about what I had been through and just tried to provide a safe place for women to reach out and talk. And I started, like I said, speaking in public about it. And that it just kind of blew up. And it's been a huge part of my recovery as well. As I connect with different women all the time and have become close to many of them. And I would say was pretty much what God was asking for, and asked and answered.
As you tell your story, I'm reminded of Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, where Joseph tells his brother, don't be afraid. What you meant for evil, God would work for his good so that many would be saved. And here you are on the other side and in recovery, recognizing that this is something that you will be in recovery for the rest of your life, as addiction is that way. And have you found that your thoughts, as you reflect back, are you looking at a different person? Are you looking at someone who you know intimately but is just not you anymore? Or is there still the thought process of drinking, or the temptation, or the passing notion that the enemy will continue to whisper that he is intent on reminding you of your past, while at the same time God will only remind you of your future?
I can honestly say that since that day, I've never wanted to pick up a drink again. And I know a lot of addicts can't say that. And I don't want to say that lightly, like it was a God thing, it was a God moment, and boom, it was gone, and my life was beautiful. That's not what I mean. I mean that when I wished I could drink, it was like I was in mourning. It just was not an option. And I was sad about it. I felt like I'd lost my best friend. I felt like I lost the only thing that I could count on. But it never occurred to me to exercise that option. I had a saying in my head that if the thought process would start, and I recognize it definitely, they were straight from the devil himself. It knew exactly what to chip away at to get me to feel weaker. And it was my expression in my head was game over. Because if I start engaging in this game, this conversation, it's going to lead me to where I don't want to go. And I've recognized often that in a lot of things that I do with addiction, whether it's getting ready for something like this or writing the book or getting the book out, so many things have to fall into place. And there has been so many things that have happened in our family or friends, or just obstacles that I know is spiritual warfare, and saying, we got to stop this. And that gives me even more drive and determination to keep going, to keep talking. I feel like there's a lot missing for women of faith seeking recovery. So that is definitely my mission in life. But I look at who I used to be, like when Facebook pops up a memory from 10 years ago, and I'm sad. I'm sad for her. I mourn her. I don't mourn the loss of her, but I feel bad for what she had to go through to get here. And I don't ever want to be her again, but I don't ever want to forget who she was either, because it's instrumental in carrying through what I want to do today. And it's very helpful when I talk with someone just to be able to say, I know how you feel, and it is worth it. You can do this, and to give someone hope. That's how recovery and healing from recovery works. And I formed a private group called Joyful Surrender, and it's about 20 women, and we talk online. We have Zoom meetings, and I learn as much from them as they do from me. And I say to them, together, we're going to do this. We're going to start a sober, faith-based revolution. And I have every intention of doing that.
Sherry, your dynamic with your husband, with your children, have obviously changed based on the confession and the going public with this. How have they responded to this?
Well, my husband has been nothing but supportive. He is my best friend. He is an amazing man of God. He's a man that's also been hurt and beat up and trampled on. And he kept coming back for more. And I'm so glad he did. But he is my biggest supporter. And things like starting a website or starting a ministry, having materials printed, anything, writing classes. He's like, whatever you need, we'll make it work. And he has been supportive, so financially and also spiritually. So yeah, he's proud of me, but he knows that other people too need to see what God can do. And so together, we've talked to other couples. We just want to give people hope. So that's our dynamic. We are stronger than we've ever been before. I always say that had addiction not hit me like it did, I don't know who I would be today, but I think she might be a little shallow and not as invested in her marriage and in her faith and in her family. So that part of it I'm grateful for, because we have an excellent marriage now. It's not perfect, but we have a really good relationship. And my kids have all responded in different ways. They're all very different. My youngest has read the book in its entirety and she was supportive. There was tears, there was laughter, but she's also the one that said there's a backstory going on that I didn't understand. And so that part's been really good. And my two oldest children have not read the book in its entirety yet, but they were there for most of it that they remember. They were a little older, so they have more questions. But as a family, I feel like they're very supportive. I also have 3 grandsons who I adore, and I thank God every day that they will never know me as drunk grandma. I think often of, I went to an AA meeting a couple times before I got sober, and there was this woman that was just crying, just like weeping. And when it came to her turn and she said why she was crying, she said, my children have decided I can't see my grandchildren alone anymore because of my drinking. And I don't even think my oldest daughter was married yet when that happened. And I remember thinking to myself, well, just quit drinking. Like, grandkids are important. I'm so glad that will never be me. But you know what? It came really close. I think I was sober for about 1.5 years when our first grandson was born, and I have never been more grateful for a sober moment in my life. So yeah, some friendships have suffered, some have regained and rebuilt, and they're stronger than ever, and others just kind of come to an unspoken agreement that your lifestyle is different than mine, and we probably aren't going to be at the same parties anymore. But the friends that I have are quality. I worry about quality and focus on that way more than quantity. So,
well,
yeah.
Pruning in God's economy brings new growth, and it's exactly what you're going through. And wisdom comes from making those decisions not to try to salvage something that is going to be harmful to you and to others around you. So I commend you for your commitment. We've been talking with Sherry Hoppen, author of the new book, Sober Cycle, Pedaling Through Recovery One Day at a Time, a very candid, transparent presentation of chronicling a journey of alcoholism, of how you could live a double life and get away with it up to a point. And that point is when God says, enough. Not when you say enough, he says enough. And he clears a path for you to recover. But that requires a relationship and an acceptance of his plan for your life. And even if you're not walking in it, the first step is believing in it. And the Word of God says, if you believe in your heart and profess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you shall be saved. The first step is accepting him as your Messiah, and then finding the strength the counseling, the comfort, the knowledge, the prayers, the journey that begins with that first step. Sherry Hoppen, thank you for sharing a sober cycle with us. We pray that many lives would be changed, that those who have been hiding may not come out of hiding, but can get healed and find a path to recovery by reading a sober cycle, pedaling through recovery one day at a time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and for helping me to get this message out there. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.